As a dependent pass or long-term visit pass holder, are you allowed to work in Singapore? If not, what needs to be done to get the work authorization? What happens is sometimes the employment pass holder plans to relocate to Singapore and his spouse might be also equally qualified. And then, if they are not allowed to work in Singapore, it might mean a career compromise for the spouse. So, then it might not be very attractive for the employment pass holder to relocate because, in that case, either his family has to stay back in his home country for the spouse career objectives, or spouse has to compromise on his or her career and shift to Singapore. So, to avoid this situation, there is something called as LOC, letter of consent. So the spouses of employment pass holders are allowed to work on this, and that includes dependent pass as well as LTVP passes. However, there is some complexity here because there are two types of LTVP in Singapore with different privileges. So let's have a look on this. First of all, what is a letter of consent? So letter of consent is a very simple process. If a dependent pass holder or a LTVP holder wishes to work in Singapore, they can apply for the job, give the interview, and if company decides to select them, then the company will have to just apply for LOC for that candidate. It's a straightforward process. The form is, I think, only 2 pages, and there is no quota or salary limit. So you can offer salary anywhere from $1,000 to maybe $20,000. You don't have to satisfy any local employee requirement, and overall the approval rate is also good. I mean, I have not seen any letter of consent getting rejected. So that is what the letter of consent is, and here I am showing you one sample copy. The sensitive data obviously I have blurred out, but basically it is saying that we are pleased to inform that letter of consent has been approved and person can work up to this date, and so on and so forth. Now, one thing to notice here, this letter of consent is tied to the main EP's validity date. So if the main EP, main employment pass, gets cancelled during this time, then automatically the dependent pass is also cancelled. And because dependent pass is cancelled, the LOC also gets cancelled. In that case, the person will have to apply for new employment pass, get a new dependent pass for the spouse, and then the company will have to apply for new LOC. So who can get this LOC? In case of employment pass and S pass applicant, he can bring in his legally married spouse on dependent pass, or he can bring in his common law spouse on LTVP, long term visit pass. In case of Singapore citizens or PR, they are also qualified to bring their spouse in Singapore on long term visit pass. Now, out of this, LOC is allowed only for dependent pass holders of a main EPS pass applicant, or for the LTVP holders who are spouses of Singapore citizens or PR. The LTVP pass holders who are spouses, common law spouse of employment pass holder or S pass holder, is not allowed to get LOC. So there is no way you can get LOC. LOC is possible only for these two categories. Sometimes people get confused between these two LTVPs, and they presume that on LTVP also they will get LOC, even though they are on LTVP for a main employment pass holder. Now there is something called as pre-approved LOC also. So the pre-approved LOC is available only for the spouses of Singapore citizen and PR who are holding an LTVP. So even the dependent pass holders are not allowed to get pre-approved LOC. And what is pre-approved LOC? Is basically it is issued in your personal name and it is already approved. So you don't need any company to file an application. Now typically what happens when you go to a company and give the interview and then later on tell them that you need LOC, it is possible that the officer is not aware of the process and he might shy away from the idea of applying for a new visa authorization. So in that case, they might even avoid such a candidate thinking that it's a complicated process. So when you have a pre-approved letter of consent, you only need to give the copy to the company and they don't have to take any extra steps on their side. You can just start working with them right away. So that is the overview of how LTVP and dependent pass holders can work in Singapore. There are two categories as you saw of LTVP, and the privileges to them are also different. Dependent pass holders and spouses of Singapore citizens or PR who are on long-term visit pass can get LOC or PLOC depending upon their visa category.
Thank you for watching this video. This video was brought to you by Epica Consulting Singapore. Subscribe to our channel today to get notified when new videos are posted.